This is a presentation of BSRN, Box Studios Radio Network. The Power Play Post Show is on the air, covering minor league hockey since 2003, and now covering the Binghamton Black Bears with news, reactions, and in-depth interviews only heard here. And now from the Box Studios in Kirkwood, New York, here is your host of the Power Play Post Show, Bob Howard.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. This is the show for May 23rd, 2024. This is season 13, episode number 48, and this is episode 433 in the long-running podcast that is the Power Play Post Show. Hello, everybody, and as Rob Lapola said, I am your host, Bob Howard, and welcome to another edition of the Power Play Post Show. And we're a couple weeks away from the championship winning game 3. It's been a couple weeks now. I'm wondering how everyone's feeling about it. I know I'm trying to get back into the normal life thing, but my New York Rangers are starting game 1 of their Stanley Cup Eastern Conference Finals matchup against the Florida Panthers here in about 15 minutes from when I am recording this segment here on Wednesday night. And, I don't think I've ever had, because in 2011, when the Binghamton Senators won the Calder Cup, I did not win the Stanley Cup as a fan as well with the New York Rangers. So it's never happened before in the same year for at least me as a fan of Binghamton hockey. And, of course, the Stanley Cup, because the Rangers don't win that often. They don't get there that often. And so, I don't know. Maybe this is the year. Who knows? I know the Florida Panthers are the favorites. So that's going to be very interesting. Listen, so we have a great show for you. You're going to hear from Andreas Johansson, and we've got some news, and we're going to break that news here in just a couple minutes and everything. And he'll talk about that as well during the interview that I have with him. And I think everyone's going to be pretty happy and pretty excited about that news. But it's been a couple weeks, right? And so what are the things that need to be worked on? Well, you need to start looking at returning players. Who's going to return back? Now, some guys aren't going to know immediately. Some guys are going to sign maybe sooner than other players, right? This is going to be spread out throughout the offseason like it was last year. It's spread out throughout the offseason, and there were, sometimes 2 signings in a week. Sometimes there was 1 signing in a week, which left the news cycle for the Black Bears kind of limited to when the Black Bears announced some news and whatnot. So, but I think the first big news would be what's going to happen with Brant Sherwood, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit, because obviously that's an important thing. I mean, listen, the guy has been in hockey as a head coach for just under 2 seasons, right? He hasn't even completed 2 full seasons, but he's already taken a team to a championship. And there are people saying that, listen, he's great with X's and O's, and he's great at recruiting. He's great at scouting. Maybe this is a guy that can move up. And I really do think he's going to move up at some point in his career. So it'll be very interesting. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. So the Black Bears, obviously, they won. Everybody's excited. I think they went to the Rumble Ponies game, the Syracuse Crunch here on Wednesday night, as they're playing in the Eastern Conference Finals, it's the North Division Finals. They haven't gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals yet in the AHL. They are celebrating the Binghamton Black Bears and with their championship. And I love this, and I hope maybe Jim Sorosi hears this. He used to listen to the show back in the day when we were covering the AHL, and he might not listen to this, and that's okay. Jim Sorosi is a really great guy. He has been running the Syracuse Crunch for Howard Dolgan for a very long time. Howard Dolgan's now going into the New York State Hall of Fame. I think it probably as a founder or as an owner. And Jim Sorosi is a great guy. Had some good conversations with him over the years, when it comes to Syracuse Crunch, and he helped me out a lot in making sure that anything that I needed from the Crunch that I got. Bob McGilligan, who is obviously the TV play-by-play for the Blue Jackets, also very much a person who helped me early on in the early days of the Power Play Post Show. So I really have a fondness for the Syracuse Crunch, and the fact that they are celebrating the Black Bears today, I thought was pretty cool as well. So let's get to the must-read so we can get to really the breaking news and the news that you guys really want to hear. And we don't get to do this that often, and we really do try to let the Black Bears announce anything, but we got permission from Andreas Johansson for this one, so let's get right to it. The Power Play Post is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube. That's right, YouTube. We'll talk about that in a second. Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show on whichever platform you listen to your podcast and subscribe. I know Frank Slack was asking me to get it on YouTube. Figured it out. All the episodes are now up on YouTube. It shows the picture of the person that I was interviewing or whatever it might be, and then you get to listen to it just like a regular podcast, but it is on YouTube now, so very exciting about that. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search for Power Play Post Show and share it with any of your friends and get them to sign up as well. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. And on this edition of the Power Play Post Show, we've already talked about it, the Binghamton Black Bears owner, Andreas Johansson. So in the interview that I did with Andreas, I asked about the elephant in the room, which was going to be the number one priority, probably to start the offseason and the silly season part of the Black Bears offseason, which was Coach Sherwood. And basically, the news that Andreas will break in the interview with me is that Brant Sherwood has been signed and will return for the 2024-25 season with the Black Bears as head coach. So this is obviously the first thing that they had to do. They had to get him back on board. And why did they have to do that? Well, because he was being scouted. He was being recruited by other teams, SPHL teams. I heard rumors about an ECHL team that was looking at him, and I also heard there was an AHL team potentially looking to have him come in as an assistant coach. Now, I don't know if those other two are the ECHL and the AHL thing is real, but I do know that there were two SP teams that wanted him to come in as head coach. Now, why would he turn those guys down? Well, probably because, and I don't know this for sure, 100%, but Andreas Johansson probably countered any offer very genuinely. So I'm sure that Brant Sherwood was taken care of very nicely. And I don't know the numbers, and it's none of my business anyways. But this is something that we talk about here on these type of talk shows, right, is this type of thing. And I'm sure basically what it came down to was that there were offers that came in. Andreas obviously came back with some pretty good offers, and it was something that Brant Sherwood was definitely going to take. Now, if you're listening to this on Thursday morning, as we're releasing this at 8 o'clock in the morning, the Binghamton Black Bears will also announce this later on today on Thursday. I did get permission from Andreas to keep the clip that we recorded with him about Brant Sherwood in the interview and to be able to talk about it here on the show in my segment. Now, the Black Bears will announce this on all their socials on Thursday, which will bring Sherwood back for his second full season and his third season with the team. While head coach of the Binghamton Black Bears, the Black Bears have gone 61-20-10, 22-10-3 after taking over for Gary Gill in the 22-23 season, and then 39-10-7 in the 23-24 season, plus a perfect 7-0 in this year's playoffs and winning the Commissioner Cup's championship. Okay, now I didn't take out the games that he was suspended in, but basically the team since Coach Sherwood took over, not minusing his suspensions and stuff like that, they are 61-20-10. Now, this season, they had 19 come-from-behind victories themselves. I know I was floating out the number 20. I went back and checked my numbers. It definitely is 19 come-from-behind wins. Re-signing Sergi was priority number one for Andreas. I could tell you that for sure from talking to Andreas. off the record and on the record. As Coach Sherwood was being courted by at least 2 SPHL teams, one of the teams was highly considering. Okay, now the advantages of having Coach Sherwood come back, right? We could talk about this, and this is important. Recruitment. Recruiting of high quality, intelligent, high hockey IQ players. This is something that Coach Sherwood is very good at, right? And we'll truly see, because not everybody's going to return next season. I know people would love every single player to come back, and they do the same exact thing. It's not going to happen. Some guys are going to try to play in the SPHL or the ECHL, okay? Connor McAnanima couldn't confirm with the 10-Minute Misconduct podcast on Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember which day they did it. Today's Wednesday. So they did it on Tuesday. He couldn't even say to them, oh, yeah, I'm definitely coming back to Binghamton. Because even he's going to try to get into a camp. Now, if he can't, obviously he's going to be very much welcomed here in Binghamton. But it is something that even Connor C-Mac has said, hey, I'm going to try potentially to play. He doesn't know what his future is. None of these guys do. And we probably won't know the interest of some of these players from some of these teams until later on. Now, the one thing I can say, if Brant Sherwood's coming back, Donald Oliveri could come back, maybe play 20 games and, go for another championship. That is something that could potentially happen. I can see that. He's still young enough, right? He and Scherzer are very much a similar age, good friends. I think Alyssa can handle, the 20 games maybe and then some playoffs again. I think she's on board on that. So we'll see, right? But recruiting of high-quality, intelligent, high hockey IQ players is something that he is very good at, right? And we're talking about the Connor Smiths, the Brendan Stankos. We're talking about even Justin Samaro and Andrew Logar. Now, he called Andrew Logar the rat, right, because of the way he plays on the ice. But Andrew Logar is very smart on that ice. Same thing with Justin Samaro. And some of these guys that he's brought in himself play very, very well, okay? I could see even Gavin Yates possibly returning if he doesn't get a look-see somewhere else and whatnot. We'll see, though. All right, so X's and O's, instituting systems that work and that players can be plugged into to keep the engine running. He is really good at X's and O's. I've sat there, watched a little bit of video with him. I've watched him talk about it. You've seen some of the things that he and Brooks Hill have done, showing you how systems in place, when they work, and they score goals. He's very good at that. That is going to be one of his biggest benefits, is being able to take video, dissect video, and turn it over. Because when he becomes an assistant coach in the AHL or into the NHL someday, and he can break down that video like other coaches may not be able to do because they don't have that skill, that is going to be a benefit to him. Okay, very much so is, because it's something that a head coach at the NHL level or GM is going to look at and go, okay, does he know his X's and O's? Does he understand instituting systems that work where players can be plugged into? And does he understand and like video? Video does make a difference in this. Watching video and showing players when things go right and when things go wrong, and being able to explain what you can do to change that or fix it or repeat it is very important. And he's very good at that. All right, player retention. I think with Scherzer coming back, there are players that I think will come back this upcoming season because Scherzer is coming back. I think you lose more than half the team if Scherzer doesn't come back. I think with Scherzer coming back, the player retention went from 50% maybe up to 60%, maybe up to 70%. I truly believe that. I know players have said, oh, yeah, I want to come back and kick ass and do all this other good stuff and everything. But truly, I truly believe that if Scherzer didn't come back, if Coach Sherwood didn't come back, then you wouldn't have seen the player retention coming back. Now, granted, 12 of them are protected, but I think you would see guys like Tyson Kirkby and potentially Jesse Anderson go to the SPHL, especially if Coach Sherwood was coaching somewhere else. But again, we won't really know. more of this, the player retention, until we get closer to the middle part of this summer when they start announcing which players are being signed. So that's very, very important. And now Coach Sherwood also has a very busy summer. He's getting married. They're moving into a new house. And he's still going to have to go out and look for new players to come in to fill in a couple of the gaps. Some of the players are going to be picked up by other teams in these expansion drafts, which nobody's really happy about. And why do teams who haven't made the playoffs get to go and pick some of these players? It's just, yeah. Let's not even go in there. Okay, so what are the other impacts of Scherzer coming back? I think on a business side of things, it's going to help, right? So fans went from fire Sherwood to thank you Sherwood at the celebration. And I think this will actually help season ticket sales and just general ticket sales in general. I think Coach Sherwood has become a face of this team in a sense, right? Of course, Tyson Kirkby is the face of this team, right? Of course, Connor McAnanima has become kind of a face of the team. But really, more so, Sherwood has. He's been on this show a bunch of times. He's been interviewed by the TV reporters, so you've seen him on TV. Coach Sherwood has become, other than Andreas, a face of this team. And I think it's going to help seeing him there next year sell tickets, both season tickets and just regular tickets as well. I think business and corporation support could increase knowing that the championship head coach is coming back. I think for business, this is good, right? So if Andreas did throw him a bunch of money to get him to come back, it's because Andreas knows that him coming back, his success here in Binghamton is also a good thing. And there's one more thing I want to throw out there. I didn't say this to Coach Sherwood, and I've had many conversations with Coach Sherwood, right? I think if you're successful here in Binghamton for 2, 3, maybe 4 years, I think you can leapfrog a level or two and get yourself at a higher level quicker than if you went up to the SP. Say, for instance, I'm just going to throw out a hypothetical. He goes to a team in the SPHL and doesn't make the playoffs next year, right? I'm not saying that he can't, but what if they don't sign all the players that he wants them to sign, and they just have a string of injuries and things just don't work out, okay? Does it hurt his ability? Or if he comes here next year and the year after that, right, and he has 2, 3, 4 successful seasons, then he moves up. Maybe he gets an ECHL coaching job in Norfolk. That's a city he's familiar with, right, in the ECHL. And he goes and he gets them to the Eastern Conference Finals. All of a sudden he's got an NHL general manager looking at him going, wait a second here. This guy knows what he's doing. He was very successful in Binghamton for a few years, right? And now he jumps up to the ECHL. He gets them to the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever it might be, right? So there is some advantages of sticking in the same place as well for a little bit, right? Think about it this way. There are guys who coach in Major Junior, which has a sick amount of talent, right, that will coach there for 7 or 8 years in one city. They'll have some good years. They'll have some bad years. They go from Major Junior up to the AHL as a head coach. There's no reason why single-A hockey cannot produce good head coaches as well, right? Now, in our first season, we had Rod Davidson, right? He had a good season in the I think with the Ice, the Indianapolis Ice, I think it was. He won a championship with them. I believe that was in the CHL, right? But it's something that people didn't forget, and that's why he got this job here in Binghamton, right? So very interesting stuff here. We'll talk to Andreas a little bit more about this here in the interview, which I'm going to get you guys to in just a few seconds. So I really appreciate everybody listening. I want to thank everybody for listening and paying attention to everything that we post here on the Facebook page or Facebook group for the Power Play Post Show. Next week, we're going to have Dylan Konecki, the equipment manager, the Binghamton Red equipment manager, here on the show to talk about winning the championship here in front of the hometown fans for him. I think all the players were very excited on that ice. But if you were on the ice when they won that championship, you saw Dylan's reactions. I think there were some tears. I think there were some huge smiles, some screams, some hell yes, and maybe a few other choice words because he was very excited about it. We're going to talk to Dylan next week here on the Power Play Post Show, which is great. We'll probably take a week off, maybe post a couple of the interviews that we did with some of the players during that week off, and then we'll come back, obviously, with another big interview with one of the championship players. That's what we're kind of planning right now. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show is Andreas Johansson. We'll talk to him a little bit more about Jersey and a lot of really cool information about the championship win and really what the summer is going to be like for the Binghamton Black Bears. So coming up next here on the Power Play Post Show, he's Andreas Johansson. I am Bob Howard. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you after. I'll talk to you guys a little bit after the interview with Andreas Johansson. We'll be right back right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Hi, this is Don Biggs from the 92-93 Binghamton Rangers.
Hi, this is Brandon Buchinski.
This is Grady Wittenberg, the voice of the Binghamton Senators, and you're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
Here is another Power Play Post Show interview exclusive with Bob Howard.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. Very excited to once again be able to talk to this gentleman. He is the owner of the Binghamton Black Bears. He is Andreas Johansson. Andreas, welcome back to the show. It's great to talk to you again. And congratulations on a very successful season all across the board for the Binghamton Black Bears, especially winning a championship. And the first time a team has ever won a championship on home ice for Binghamton, which is pretty impressive and pretty exciting for everybody involved. Congratulations and welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks, and it's always a pleasure coming on the show.
Andreas, let's talk about that Friday night. Carolina obviously came into town a couple nights before. I think probably expected to stay a little bit longer or get to play a little bit more than they did. I heard nothing but great things from the Carolina fans, the Carolina organization, about how well they were treated here in Binghamton, which is, contrary to maybe the way Binghamton and Danbury kind of handle each other and whatnot in competition. But you had to have been pretty happy to see some of the comments and probably even the organization talk about how professional and how amazing it was to play up in Binghamton, even though they lost the series in Binghamton.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Carolina, truly very classy organization, including their fans. I mean, I went down there, and I had never been to a game there before. The only experience I kind of had with it was, a game a few years ago with Watertown that didn't end so well.
Right.
So that was a pretty bad impression. And I know, last year we played down there, I think we had some issue with a fan and one of our players and stuff like that. So I didn't really know what to expect. But the fans were so nice, not just to me, but to all of our fans. They couldn't have been nicer. And their organization too, they ran it well. Everything was well taken care of at the arena. And yeah, obviously when they came up to us, we want to reciprocate. They actually they have a really good group of guys, off the ice. Good coaching, good ownership, all throughout the organization. So we wanted to make sure they had a good time. They were really, really good about, the BU graduation was on. So normally, the league has a certain mandate where it's got to be a certain rate for the hotel, and we got to send them to a place, and we just couldn't do it. So they ended up staying at I think it was an Airbnb somewhere out in PA, and they didn't complain about it. They knew that there wasn't really much we could do. Just the week before when we went to Motor City during the draft, we couldn't get a normal hotel at a normal rate either. So they handled it well, and I think their fans were happy. I think, like you said, they would have liked it to last a little bit longer than it did. But I think this might be another matchup that I think we'll see them in the regular season next year, and very possible too. It's very early to speculate, but wouldn't be shocked if we see them again in the postseason either.
No, I totally agree with you. What was interesting was, in my standpoint, 10 minutes after the game ended, and the Black Bears are obviously in the midst of celebrating and hugging each other, and they'd already gone through the handshakes. I would say a good portion of that 5,011 people that came and saw that game were still in the arena. I was pretty impressed with that. Were you able to kind of step back for a second and take a look around at how many fans were still there, 10, 15, 20 minutes after the game had ended?
Actually, this time I did, yeah. So I kind of told myself before the game, like, if we're fortunate enough to be winning, right? Like, let's, I had my wife and my kids there and my parents. So, like, obviously I wanted them to be a part of it. But I kind of said this time, let's leave the phone. Like, you're going to get, and you do get this, like, you get 50, 60 text messages the minute the game's over. And, like, I remember when we won, like, up in Watertown, I was kind of, like, responding to people and stuff. And now I just thought, hey, leave that till the next day. Like, everybody will understand. So just kind of enjoy the moment a little more because, we're hoping we'll get the same thing next year, but you never know, right? So, yeah, I remember, like, when Kirkby was skating around with a cup, and me and Brant, I think, we kind of had a moment talking to each other, and we were like, I cannot believe that, like, probably 80, 90% of people are still in their seats. Like, and you can see when you look at the pictures, I know you took a bunch of them.
Yep.
You can see, like, even when it gets, like, further down, like, even when I had a trophy, like, I was after all the players and Brant. Maybe I wasn't after all the players. I'm not sure what the order was, but that was, like, quite some time after. And the fans were still there. So, like, that was really special, and especially for the players, like, it makes it even that much more special, and most of these fans have been coming for 3 years, right? So, like, we recognize a lot of them. Like, we might not know all the names, but, you give a nod to a lot of people, and they kind of look you in the eye. Like, it's very special. Like, it's kind of hard to explain. It's almost like a surreal moment, especially because it did really come down to the wire, even though, like, it felt like when we got that empty netter, I was like, we did it. And then they go down and score again.
Yep.
And, the last 30 seconds, it feels like it's, I remember, like, they chip it down in the corner. It's like 10 seconds to go. I think it was Mattu or Weebs that was in the corner eating the puck. And I was like, okay, looking at the clock, and you're thinking, yeah, they're not going to get there. Like, they're not going to get the puck out. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, it's surreal. So you really just want to take it all in.
This is obviously your second championship. How was it different this time around versus with Watertown?
Well, I think there is a couple things, right? Like, obviously, I loved winning it up there, and I was very fortunate, because we had a great group up there, too. Obviously, doing it in Binghamton, like, it's a much bigger scene, like, as far as fans and just as far as, like, the involvement of the entire community, like, including the media and, like, business owners and the politicians. Like, all that stuff in Binghamton is a lot bigger than it was. Mm-hmm. I think the way that Watertown we won was a little different because the final then was the best of three. So I think we played on the road. I want to say we played on a Thursday in Columbus and lost. Came back home and won like on a Saturday or a Sunday or something. And then going into game three, it was either we were going to win the championship or we were going to basically lose the whole thing, right? But like you didn't have, like we did now, you have a full week of like build up and selling tickets and people, just
Andreas, you there?
So that was like one change. And also I do think, like no discredit to what we did back then, but I think the league now is a lot harder to win, if that makes sense. Like back then, I think we probably won 75, 80% of our games with Watertown. And then Columbus were somewhat close to us. And, Danbury and Carolina back then weren't like as competitive, I think, as they are now. So I think winning now when the league is much, much, much better, like across the board, I think it, obviously it's a little bit harder. And I would say, doing it on this bigger scene with an organization that I guess I could say like I was truly there from day one. You know, like Watertown had been there for 8, 9, 10 years maybe when I bought it. So like even though I made a lot of changes to it, it still was something that was already built. While this one, we really took it from cradle to here. So like of course it's special, you know, but winning it with, you know, Trevor and Bobby that were employee number 1 and 2, like they've been there as long as and being on the ice with them, I felt the same with them as I did with Jersey and the players. You know, and Dylan, you know, he's been there since the start. Like it definitely was more special just because I think it involves a lot more people than what it did in Watertown. But, you know, winning is winning, right? Like you can't, you know, if we win next year, I'm going to say that was the best one, right? Like it's always like that.
The strength of the organization seems to keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The attendance numbers are obviously going up, and obviously the success on the ice has gone up. But can you at least touch upon a little bit the strength of the organization, how healthy it is financially? Because I think that's an important part. I know that in the AHL days, people didn't talk about, you know, financials that much. You, without giving us complete details, have talked to us about, hey, yeah, we're better this year than we were last year, and the year before that, and everything. So, in 3 years, are you surprised, or are you just pleasantly happy on the strength and of the financial side of this organization, and that it's gotten better from year to year to year?
Well, yeah. So, like, you know, first year obviously was tough. Like, I would say our first year was a break even pretty much financially just because we were dealing with, I mean, first of all, we had corporate support, but not to the level that we had this year and even last year.
Right.
Season ticket sales were a little slower first season, and, you know, COVID was a massive problem, right? Because even though I don't think we were limited in attendance, but, you know, you were doing masks or vaccines or whatever it was. And we played a lot of, like, just horrible dates. You know, we played Mondays and Wednesdays and, you know, stuff like that. Last year, honestly, we did really well financially. But, yeah, this year definitely was even better. I think, you know, our motto is, you know, the league model itself allows us to be successful. Mm-hmm. And obviously with the attendances that we have, like everything kind of feeds each other. Like if you have good attendance, you're going to get more corporate support. If you get more corporate support, you can put more money on the ice. And if you put more money on the ice, team's going to win more, which is going to drive attendance. So like it kind of fuels itself, right? And I think what we have done well is we were kind of willing to spend the money kind of before we knew what was going to happen, because it's not always a direct relationship either between winning on the ice and drawing fans. Often it is, but not always. But we've pretty much from the first season, like, but especially going into year 2, and you know, I was a lot more, I would say, hands-on from the second year, where we've been really willing to spend money on players and like player comfort. And just trying to keep them comfortable and make sure that, you know, if they get a call to go somewhere else, you know, especially if it happens to be the SPHL, that maybe they decide to stay here. And also that, you know, Jersey, when he's recruiting players, he knows that, you know, if he promises something to a guy, that we're gonna stand behind him and back him up on that. So, no, financially, we got no, you know, I think I've always said, like, this isn't primarily for that reason, but yeah, we're doing very well. We have a great deal with the arena. Like, they understand the benefit of having a team that draws a lot of fans in there, great corporate support. So, and I think, you know, you always want to get better. There's still areas on the business side that we can improve on. You have to be realistic that with the growth we've seen the last 2 years, like, you're not going to see the same growth year after year. I mean, I think this year we had one game that was essentially lost to snowstorm, or maybe we had 2,600 tickets or something, but the rest of the year was really, really strong numbers. Even the beginning of the year, which normally is kind of tough, we had a pretty good draw, even those games in October.
Yeah, when I ran the numbers for attendance-wise and what was reported, obviously through the league website and me being there and stuff, I think the 75% or higher games went down 16 to 13. The 90% games went up a little bit more. Obviously, the sellouts obviously went from 2 to 7, which was obviously very good. What it told me, though, overall, is that every single game, except for maybe the one game with the snowstorm, the average attendance went up for each game, which is obviously very good, especially in year 3. That puts you guys at 39.56 as an average attendance for the regular season. And I truly do believe that more than likely the team could, if the same type of growth, 2 to 3% growth happens, we're looking at a team in the Federal Hockey League that averages in the regular season above 4,000. And that'd be the first time Binghamton has seen that since the early, like 04-05 Senators days. That's pretty good. Do you think you guys can increase another 2 to 3% from this year to next year?
I think we can. I mean, first of all, even already now we're seeing, we were just a touch under 1,000 season ticket holders, and already now we're seeing like new buyers of those seats coming in because maybe they wanted to buy tickets to a game that was sold out. So now, when you're first coming in the first year, it's kind of hard to tell people you should get season tickets when they don't know what our sales are going to look like. But now that you're selling out 6-7 games a year, all of a sudden you have a reason. Because even if you show up on the day of the game and we have tickets left, like for some games, it's going to be seats that maybe you don't want those, or you want 4 or 5 seats together, which maybe we couldn't do.
Right.
So increasing season tickets certainly helps. I mean, one of our, I wouldn't say weakness, but group sales and school groups and stuff, like we did pretty well with it towards like second half of the season, but the first half there's still plenty of room there to grow. And same, like we could always do more with youth hockey and special hockey. Like when, as soon as their season's over, we have a really good chance of getting them in, which we did. We did have a lot of them attend our games. And the schedule, like we still have, just some early drafts, but it looks pretty favorable. Like there's a couple of things that we've requested to change, but overall, like it looks like we're going to be able to dodge midweek games other than New Year's, which I think this year is a Wednesday, which I don't mind that at all. Like we've done very well on New Year's, and the same day before Thanksgiving, which actually, even though it's been really good, it's actually still one of our like probably 4 or 5 slowest nights. But I think for every year that goes, like it becomes more and more like a tradition or a habit.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna like. I remember when Anaheim started doing it. Like at first, people were like, "Why would we go?" It was like a Black Friday at 1 o'clock Pacific. And after a few years, they really built into something. But at first, it was kind of like a pretty slow sale. So I think if you have to play midweek anyway, like give me the day before Thanksgiving rather than a random Wednesday somewhere else or even a Sunday. Like I think we might have 1 or 2 Sundays, but they're going to be so long as they're not together with a Friday and a Saturday. Like I don't mind it if it's Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Sunday. No problem, because we do have to fit the games in on the schedule, and we obviously don't want to drop to play 52 or 54 games. So like it's a little bit of a give and take, but with the same schedule, I don't see any reason why we can't grow. Especially I think there's a little more variety in the schedule coming up. Like we're not going to see a ton of like the teams from far away, and we're not going to go a ton to them, but we'll get a little bit more of a mix than what we had this year.
Speaking of the schedule, how concerned is the league? And when I say the league, I mean pretty much all the owners involved and maybe Don Kernan and everything. Are they with cities like Mississippi doing what they did, which was make the arena not available for like a month and a half, things of that nature? Athens is coming in, but the pricing is so high for those tickets from what I could see. I realize it's a newer arena and everything. Is there any concern within the league about being able to get a more balanced schedule in place? Based on how do you play Mississippi's schedule when for a month and a half they have to play on the road, that type of thing. What kind of conversations are being had amongst the owners about stuff like that?
I mean, on a selfish note, like the Mississippi one, I didn't even know about that until you said it, because we don't play them, so I don't really pay attention to them. Is it ideal? No. Like, obviously, as an owner, it would be very difficult because you're on the road for that long and you have a lot of cost. And depending on what they're doing with the ice, they might not even be able to practice, right? Or they might have to go practice somewhere else, which would really be a killer. Like, we've been kind of lucky that even when we don't have ice for the weekend, usually the ice doesn't get covered up until like the Thursday night or the Friday. So like we can still practice like normal.
Yeah.
And then you hit the road like a day early. So obviously it's definitely a concern, I think, as far as creating the schedule, but I don't know if there's anything that, the league can't really do anything about it. And I know we have a couple stretches where we can't play home for 2-3 weeks. So obviously it's a shorter period. But I don't think they can do anything really about it. And I'm not sure it's necessarily like, so long as the owner of that team is fine with it, I guess it's okay. Like,
right.
So long as they're not going to the same team every time. And then obviously what I guess would concern me is if I'm not playing at home for 6 weeks in a row, that's 12 weekend games, 12 weekend dates that are gone. Like, am I then replacing that with midweeks or Sundays, which, at least for us, it would be not very favorable. But, to us, it's not a problem. Like, I don't really care what they do. Same with the ticket pricing. I mean, it looked a little steep maybe from what I saw, but maybe that market is used to it, or maybe they did their research. I'm sure. I mean, these are pretty qualified owners. I think they own 2 teams in the coast. So I'm assuming like they did their research. I mean,
sure.
we wouldn't price ours like that, but maybe we're way too cheap. I don't know. I think we're right where we should be, but again, like that's same thing there. It doesn't really concern us what they do.
Yeah, no. For the Fed, how important is it that Athens is successful? Because obviously it's a 55-minute drive, I think, to Columbus, and to kind of give Columbus that nice, I want to say shorter, home and home type of series that they could probably have. Obviously with Athens and everything, I think the closest team to them before was Carolina and everything. So how important is it to have a team like Athens come in and be kind of successful off the bat?
I think it's always important when teams are coming in that they do have success, because obviously, in the short time that we've been in Binghamton, I mean, you've seen the league grow
sure.
significantly into, with the exception of the new team in Hudson Valley, which is kind of like, the league's doing the best they can with that situation, right? Keeping the Elmira team intact, which I fully support that. But the new buildings you're seeing now are exclusively larger buildings, right? So when we came in, we were probably maybe the second biggest in the league, and now I think we're somewhere right in the middle, right? Like there's maybe even the lower half size-wise, because there are a lot of larger buildings in the South, and I know that there are plenty of others that are they're not going to come in this year because we're getting already kind of close. But it seems, and I would agree, that like most of the growth potential in general would be in the South, just because up here, the North, the Northeast, there aren't that many buildings that are empty, and the ones that are, there's a reason for it. Either the cost is not, there's no way to make it work financially, or the building doesn't necessarily want the hockey team. So I think the South is where the growth is. And obviously, if you see as a rival league, right, that's out there that probably really would have wanted Athens, mm-hmm. We managed to get into Mississippi and Baton Rouge, and now we got Athens. So, like, surely there's other teams and venues that are watching kind of how this is going, as well as how Mississippi and Baton Rouge have done.
Do you think there's ever a possibility that Albany, New York, which used to have obviously the River Rats and the Albany Devils there, Maybe not in the Knickerbocker because that's probably obviously too big of an arena to host a Fed team. Do you think there's anywhere in that part of the state that could eventually become part of the Fed?
That's a tough area, and I mean it's not really a secret so long as I don't get into numbers. I mean,
sure.
I was invited up there. I think it was last year. Maybe it was beginning of this season, whatever. Just to because they were curious about getting hockey back in there, right? Because they had an AHL team.
Yep.
Before it even came to Binghamton, right? And without going too much into their financials, they're doing pretty well. They've got a lacrosse team. I think they had arena football, which I don't think that's there anymore. They do have I think it's D1 basketball, and it's a beautiful arena. It's a great building, very modern. They have a lot of major concerts there. So their cost that they wanted was much, much higher than we would have been willing to consider. It wasn't even in the ballpark.
Right.
And Albany also is a little bit difficult because for the league to really do well, we need to play Fridays and Saturdays. And from what everyone I talked to up there was saying was that most people in Albany, at least with a little higher disposable income, they leave, right? Because it's a pretty politically driven city, and most
Sure.
people, they go back to wherever they live for the weekends. And also in general, it is a pretty tough market. And I actually spoke to the guys that ran the Devils when they were up there, and their corporate revenue, granted this is 10 years ago or something,
Right.
was quite a bit lower than what we are right now in Binghamton. And also the arrangement with the arena was completely different. In Binghamton, we control all the advertising, while in Albany, the building controls everything on the concourse and the mezzanine, and you really only have the dasher boards and the scoreboard during your own games.
Wow.
And you have one skybox to sell, or we have 8, and Elmira had 30. So you can't I don't see it. Plus, they got the Thunder, the Adirondack team is not that far out. So
Right.
I don't know. I actually spoke to Rob Lipolis, our former broadcaster, is up there now, and I called him when I was in Albany, and his thinking was kind of the same, that it probably wouldn't be a great market for a team. And to be completely honest, I think they were also kind of well, would you consider an AHL team or an ECHL team? Which, no, if we can't make it with the Fed, we're never going to make it with this league.
Right.
So I don't know. You never know what will happen in the future. Maybe something will open up. And it is a beautiful building, and from time to time we do keep in touch. But I think that would be probably more of a long-term thing.
All right, let's come back to Binghamton a little bit. I think it's probably no secret that Brant Sherwood, the head coach of the Binghamton Black Bears, what he did in just a year and a half, he kind of cleaned house a little bit and everything, moved some guys on, brought in a lot of his own players, came through, believed in the system. He created a system that worked, won the championship, and we would all be kidding ourselves if we didn't think Brant probably could and potentially have opportunities, at a higher level and everything. How important was it the first business of after winning the championship was to start securing potentially having Brant come back? You don't have to go into any specifics or details, but I got to imagine that probably Saturday morning after winning the championship, you were probably thinking to yourself at one point, I got to make sure that Brant is happy and wants to stay here in Binghamton.
Yeah, no, of course. And I mean, it is, it's no secret. And I think if you air this on Thursday, it'll already be announced that Brant is coming back next year.
Right.
But yeah, it was very important to us. He did a great job here. I think he was very happy here. It's also not surprising that he did have other offers. Hockey is a very small world, and Brant was very upfront, and he told me that certain teams were inquiring about him, a little while ago. And hockey is kind of funny compared to a lot of other industries where you don't really talk about the future until you're kind of there. So we had a few basic discussions, I would say, like maybe during the playoffs and stuff like that, because we did spend a lot of time together, on the road in Carolina and Motor City. But I kind of knew what he wanted, and I think he knew what we want. Obviously he's been here for a year and a half, right? And we do have a great friendship, like away from hockey, and I kind of knew what would make him happy and what more than anything was fair for him to come back. And I think in his mind, I think he always wanted to stay here for a while longer. He's kind of started building something great, and I think he wants to see if we can run it back. I have no doubt in the future that he's going to have opportunity to go somewhere perhaps far better than the FPHL.
Right.
I think he can go a lot of places, and I think he really likes the organization we have, and I think he knows that, like, I won't really meddle in what he does, and ultimately, every player decision that he made, I would back him up on it, and everything that, if he has to promise a player something, or, when we need to do something for the guys, he knows that, I've got his back, and I think that meant a lot to him. So yeah, that obviously was a very big, part of the puzzle, because, that's, for the players too, it's very important, because they are very loyal. I think they'd be loyal to the organization, but obviously they are loyal to the coach that brought them here and gave them their first opportunity of playing pro. So obviously we're very happy. It's a great relief too. Finding a coach of that caliber is very, very difficult.
What do you think? Because I know we talked about last week here on the Power Play Post Show, and we spoke to him about it as well, was the exit interviews and that whole process and everything. What do you think? Because when I sat down and I talked to him about the exit interviews, and he said that there were some guys that actually gave him that he got critical feedback from some of the guys about stuff that he could do better. But what did you think that Brant did the best this past season or season and a half? What area was he just so outstanding on that you were kind of pleasantly surprised and happy that he was so good at it?
I wouldn't say anything really surprised me, because I knew that he was going to be great. But I mean, if I had to pick, first of all, the recruitment, obviously, the guys that he brought in were not just great players, but just great, personalities. That room was just a pleasure to be in. I think the other thing is and you kind of said that, about his plan. He has his plan for how he wants to win, and he's got to follow through. It doesn't matter the caliber of the player, the resume of the player. If it fits his model, he's gonna stick with the guy, and if it doesn't, he's gonna make moves. And
right.
I think that's what I probably respect the most about him, because almost every other coach at some point they kind of cave in, because they'd be afraid of, well, if I cut this guy now, how's that going to look and what's going to happen? But he truly didn't care. And I do think he has a really good way with the players. I mean, just, because we do the exit interviews together, but separate rooms. So,
yeah.
He talks mostly hockey, and I talk, about the organization. But obviously, kind of, you kind of touch them both anyway, right? And
right.
You give you an example, you take a guy like Liam Anderson or Utes, Andrew Utoro or Rami, guys that didn't play in the postseason at all. Not one of them had a bad word to say about Jersey. Quite the opposite. They were just hey, we just love being a part of this. We can't wait to be back. That's, you don't usually get that. Usually the guys that don't play much, even if they don't outright say, I don't like the coach, at least they'll make some comment about, well, some things could have been better, I guess, but
right.
He was okay. There was none of that. And I think he's a great, I know Eggy told me he's never had a coach better with goalies than Jersey, which was kind of surprising, I think, to both me and Brant, because he's told me he's not good at working with the goalies. But I think what he does is he communicates with them. He lets them know who's going.
Yeah.
They know kind of what they have to do, and I think that's what he's really good at. So I think it's easy sometimes to to criticize a younger coach that's just coming out of playing as being, oh, he thinks too much like a player or he's too close with the players, which I think, Brant does have some of that. Like he still has the emotion as if he's playing in a game, which I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. Like, he just wants to win so bad. Mm-hmm. But he also knows how the players, especially like this generation, how they think and like kind of which buttons to press, which sometimes with an older coach, it's a little bit harder, and he played at this level. Like, he's not a guy that's only played or coached juniors, and he's not a guy that comes from the NHL or the AHL where the expectation is a little different. So I think he was perfectly kind of cut out for it. But yeah, to pick one thing, I'd say, just his way of recruiting the guys.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive to see the players that we recruited. There was a TikToker who actually put out a video, and it basically showed, all the D3 guys and the ACHA guys, and he's like, listen, this team just won the championship here at a pro level with these D3 guys and these ACHA guys. I really do think, Andreas, it comes down to the character of the players. Obviously, I interviewed a really good portion of the team this year, and as Brant told me, he goes, you found a nice little story that I got to know about the player that maybe I was able to bring up in conversation later on. But what I noticed is that all these guys were just highly intelligent, very articulate, and I know that has nothing to do with playing hockey, but really to be able to communicate with your boss or with your coach or with the owner of the team or with the media, all those things really do matter. Character, being able to be articulate, intelligence. So many of these guys have college degrees and everything. And I think Brant Sherwood, the way he handled Cam Clark, because Cam Clark was in the middle of trying to finish up his 4-year degree and also play hockey, and the way coach, I think Cam Clark is always going to be like, wow, thank you, coach, for doing that and stuff. All this has to do with Brant wants to make sure these guys are better human beings, not just better hockey players as well.
Yeah, if you look at, previous years, it wasn't like that. But like you said, these were all good guys. They're intelligent guys because ultimately what you do on the ice, obviously, is very important. But, this is a full-time – this is their jobs, right? And it's Brant's job. So, if you're around these guys 6 days a week, at least, and you're traveling together, you need to have a cohesive group. And I think, credit to Billy McCreary. I know that Brant, after last season, kind of looked at Danbury and said, all right, they won the cup with, on paper, probably not the best team. And I don't mean any disrespect to them. Sure. I think if you look at, other teams in the league, probably including us, you look at the names that we had, you're thinking, yeah, this team should be winning, but it didn't for reasons that, we've probably covered elsewhere, right? But I think you looked and saw what Danbury did, and they had a good team with certainly some star players, but everybody was kind of not submissive is not the word, but subservient, I think is the word I'm looking for, to the organization.
Right.
Whatever the coach or the organization needed, even the small things of being out there, making appearances with schools and interacting with the fans, all that stuff kind of comes into it. It's not going to be the deciding factor whether a player should be here or not, but it's all, if you have a choice between two guys that are somewhat similar, you're going to be with a guy that's a better human every single time.
What is the agenda for the league meetings that'll be happening this week? What is really kind of what the owners? What are you guys going to be hammering out and working on?
I think the main thing is going to be scheduling. We talk about schedule. There's always, if there's any proposal to rule changes, and then every team, if you want to raise a couple of points, you can raise a couple of points. So we'll be doing that. A little bit of marketing, usually there's some external companies coming in to pitch whatever products they have, which normally I let Bobby and Trevor will kind of sit through that more so than me. But you try to get as much done as you can. If we can get most of the scheduled hammered out, and I'm sure there are teams that are going to race whatever issues they have, like we're going to raise probably 2 or 3 things, and then I'm happy once I get that off my chest, kind of, and hopefully moves like relatively smooth.
Off the ice, what is going to be the goal this upcoming off season for the Binghamton Black Bears? Off ice, what's going to be the goal?
We want to keep growing. We want to keep growing our season ticket base even further. We want to get a little bit more structure, I think, to the bit. Like, we've had a great business, but it's kind of been from like the first year where it's kind of everyone has their thing that they do and they all kind of work together. But we want to put a little more, I wouldn't say protocols in place, because that's not really what you need with a small office, but just streamlining parts of the operations. Like we'll get someone in that can work a little closer with Brant. Like not just we'll get an assistant coach, like a full-time assistant coach, but also somebody that can work a little closer with arranging travel and food and practice on the road and community appearances, all of this kind of stuff that kind of is a drain on his time. And at the same time, like for the guys upstairs, it's not really worth their time either, if that makes sense. Like, we want to have someone that can kind of handle those things.
That's a great, I don't think people understand how great of an idea that is, right? To be able to have somebody that kind of doesn't have to do what the guys up in the front office do or up in the office do, but at the same time kind of alleviates the coach from having to do some of that work as well, because he and I think Brant got some help from some of that, like from a guy like Jesse Anderson, who actually helped with some of the travel and stuff and calling, making phone calls, things of that nature. It's good to take kind of that away from them guys a little bit, so they can concentrate more so on the hockey side of things and maybe the recruitment side of things.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of, I think that's what. Certainly for Brant, I think that was an important part of like going forward too, because he's a hockey coach. I mean, he's in the rink at 7:00 in the morning. He's watching video. He's clipping video. So like once you get done with practice and maybe it's 3:00 in the afternoon, and a player they want something like their apartment needs some repairs or something, like he doesn't necessarily want to, or rather it's not the best use of his time to be trying to find like a contractor to do that, or somebody needs to schedule a doctor's appointment. Like having a person that handles all of that or handles the insurance for the players, that kind of stuff is like, it's worth a ton, because it is a drain on your time, especially as the season kind of gets going. There's a lot of coordination. There's a lot of community things that happen. Traveling is kind of an easy part, to be honest, because, I mean, you text the bus driver what time you want to leave, and, you text the hotel how many rooms you need. So that part's not too bad, but, like, even where do you eat on the road, and where do we get food from after tonight's game, all those kinds of things that are kind of on their own, like, they're 2 minutes, but when you do a lot of them and you have a lot of other stuff on your plate, like, it's just kind of a little aggravating. And the guys in the front office, as it is right now, are pretty much in there, like, 6, if not 7 days a week. So, and same with Dylan and his guys. Like, they're kind of, they work pretty hard too. So getting someone in like that, I think, is a priority for us. And it's just keep growing. We have the same philosophy kind of upstairs as downstairs. Like, we want our employees to keep growing in their roles and be happy and have the opportunity to expand. So we'll do our kind of like one-on-one exit interviews there too, like here in the next week or so, and see where everybody's at. But we definitely look forward to like a couple of weeks of a little bit of peace now before we kind of move into the new season.
Andreas, a couple of weeks ago, I made a point here on the show to say that Trevor was your number 2. Trevor came up to me and he's like, "Hey, listen, thanks for calling me his number 2 and everything." He goes, "But I think it's really Bobby and I that are kind of serve as kind of that role." It obviously was never put into place of maybe who was your number 2 within the organization, because I know that a lot of times you're only in there on Wednesdays unless your need be for something else major important and everything. to me, it's impressive that you've had a team, Bobby and Trevor and everybody else in that office, that has been able to work together when, they know that you're the owner and you're technically be-all, end-all boss at the end of the day, but they've kind of worked as a team to achieve what they've achieved. And again, I truly believe what the Black Bears have done since game one to, winning the championship and everything in the back office to be probably almost as impressive as actually what Brant has done to win the championship. And people are like, oh, Bob, what are you saying here? What are you saying here? Because it is so hard to sell hockey tickets. It's so hard to sell the corporate sponsorships and to get people to come and support. It is one of the most difficult things to do in minor league sports is to have a successful financial side of things. And I think it's impressive, especially with you being there basically on Wednesdays to help, maybe put out some fires and field questions and things of that nature. And then the team is really doing the rest of the time.
No, that's exactly it. And that was kind of the approach I took from pretty early on. Like you said, I go in like most Wednesdays, at least now over the summer. Like once the season starts, I truly don't have to show up in the office. Like it doesn't, I still do because I love being around the guys there, but it doesn't, I don't have to. You can take a couple different approaches. I mean, you can go in and really micromanage and say, look, I'm the boss and here's what we're going to do. Or you kind of let them figure out like, hey, this is what needs to happen. Here's the schedule. Kind of what we need to do. And you let them work on it, right? And obviously, like you said, like I'm there. I can answer questions. And ultimately, there are some things where, they'll want my input on it. But even when we've made mistakes, like it's never been like a wasted thing. Like it's been, hey, we screwed up on this, but we have a solution for next time. Here's what we're going to do. And I think with especially like that, I mean, I'm still fairly young, but like with that generation, like I think that works the best. Like let them work together. I don't micromanage. I'm not calling it 8:30 in the morning to see that everyone's in the office and at 5 o'clock to know that they're still there. I don't really care. I mean, so long as they're coming through and we're selling our tickets and sponsorships, and they do understand like the biggest threat to like any organization like ours is complacency. Like it doesn't mean that because we've done well now the last 2 years, it doesn't mean we're automatically going to do well next year. So like we have to work for it. But yeah, I'm super proud of everyone. Like Trevor and Bobby obviously been there since the start. And, I know when we went out the night when we won the championship, I told them like, I don't think you guys realize like how far we've come. Like our first game ever we played and we sold a lot of tickets, but we didn't know how to print them. So like we had 2,000 plus people never even made it in, and we had so many like near misses the first year where it could have been a complete disaster, and we just about pulled it off up to where it is today. Where like this year, like it really went off with like nothing bad happened. But we've got Bobby, Trevor, like Kelsey's been there since first year. Brooksy, came in and replaced Lipolis, and he's done tremendously well. Like if you compare like his first few games last year to how he was now.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it is confidence, right? Like you settle into the role, you kind of get accepted into it, and obviously he had huge shoes to fill right after Rob. EJ too is an unbelievable graphic designer, and Josh and the entire video team, Alex that still works for us, part-time, Brandy that, she's been there since first season too, although like her responsibilities have, grown a lot on the PR side. Like it's everybody together, and like they have a good respect for each other, but they're still not afraid to have tough conversations with each other either. So they've done an unreal job.
Tell me a little bit about, and this is my last question before I let you go. Tell me a little bit about your family being on the ice, and how important was that to you to have your son, who's a little bit older now, to be able to really appreciate potentially everything that just went down?
It's really special. The first time we won in Watertown, my brother was was the GM up there. So I had him with me, and like my parents were there and stuff, but it was kind of like, I wouldn't say it was a mess, but like it was overtime in the deciding game. So like you didn't really know how it was going to play out, and you don't take it in the same way. Well, now they were here from, I think they came up like after the Watertown series. So they were kind of with us on the whole journey and like going to the games together, sitting together. Like it's pretty special because you never know when you get the opportunity to do this again. Plus, I really wanted them to kind of see like up close how crazy this really is. And I mean, I think it probably hits them more than me in some ways, because for me, you don't want to sound like that, but like you get kind of used to it. Like you go into the arena and there's a ton of fans and everybody wants to speak to you and they love the players. And like, I'm kind of used to it. Mm-hmm. So I think for them to see it like that close and being a part of it and being near, Coach Sherwood and his parents and the other players and being part of the celebration on the ice, it's special. And I'm really glad, like my son, he's turning 5 here soon. So like, he's actually kind of starting to understand a little more how it, the first time we won it, he didn't really know what was going on. It was 2 years old, but now like he kind of knows most of the players by name, and he knows a lot more about kind of how it all works. So it meant a lot, and my wife too. Like she was there when we won with Watertown, but I was kind of like middle of pregnancy and all this stuff. So like being able to just take it all in and really celebrating it properly. Like Watertown was a little different because, I sold the team. So like the minute the party was over, I was kind of out of there. So it was a little awkward. Mm-hmm. While here, obviously it wasn't like that. So like having them there, seeing the games with us and just being part of like something special, it means everything, like family, you realize it the longer you're kind of in something like this. You can have a lot of success in other businesses and like nobody really cares other than you. But something like this, it's something you want everybody to be a part of, and like for them to see like what we've done here and what it means to the fans, it's quite special.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, you guys have something quite special. Obviously, good that you're going to have to plan for the first game of the season with the banner raising, and just the celebration continues throughout the summer up until that first game when you guys, the new team will have to put their, lace up their skates and tie their skates and get ready and everything. You'll have that nice little ceremony to start the season, remembering what happened at the end of this season. And that's special for everybody, from returning players to obviously the staff and just the fans in general. Andreas, thank you very much for coming on. We totally appreciate it. I'm sure this is not the last time we'll talk too.
I hope not. No, I hope we get to do it plenty more times. But thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome. And we'll be right back right after this, right here on the Power Play Post Show.
If you're a Binghamton hockey fan, then you need to check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your news, stats, information, the Binghamton Hockey Hall of Fame, top 10 lists, profiles, and so much more. That's binghamtonhockey.net. You're listening to the Power Play Post Show.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Power Play Post Show. Once again, we will have Dylan Konecki on the show next week here on the Power Play Post Show. Thank you very much to Andreas and letting us be able to be one of the first people to bring you the news that Brant Sherwood is back as head coach of the Binghamton Black Bears, and he's got a lot of work ahead of him. But congratulations to him and to the Binghamton Black Bears, obviously, for such a great season. We'll have an episode next week with Dylan, the EQ of the Binghamton Black Bears, so we're very excited about that. And let me get through the must-reads and get you guys out of here for the day, and so you can go enjoy whatever you're doing. And if you're in a truck, listening to the Power Play Post Show, which I know a few of the fans drive truck. Be safe out there, guys. I'm glad you're listening, but please always be safe out there, especially with this warm weather and just the way the crazy people drive out there. But the Power Play Post Show is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, YouTube. That's right, YouTube. Amazon Music and iHeartRadio. Just search Power Play Post Show, whichever platform you listen to your podcast, and subscribe. Please join the Power Play Post Show Facebook group. Just go to Facebook and search Power Play Post Show. Check out binghamtonhockey.net for all your Binghamton hockey information and curiosity. Thank you very much to Rob Lapolis, our MC, John Petitucci, our musical director, and from the Binghamton Black Bears, owner of the Black Bears, Andreas Johansson. I am Bob Howard. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Power Play Post Show.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Power Play Post Show. Be sure to tune in next week to the Box Studios Radio Network for all the latest Black Bears news and interviews from around minor league hockey. The Power Play Post Show would like to thank John Patitucci for all the music you hear on the show. You've been listening to the Power Play Post Show.